Well, it looks like the second presidential debate will not be happening after all. Yet, there's still a lot that we can learn from looking at the previous events in order to gather a better understanding of what worked and what didn't, hopefully, for the fourth and final debate. So one issue that has come at both of the events is the issue of the climate and energy, with Democrats focusing on the prior issue and then Republicans pivoting to the latter. Here to help us make sense of these arguments is Alex Flint, the executive director for the Alliance for Market Solutions. So, Alex, Senator Kamala Harris, she was pressed on her support for the Green New Deal at the last debate. I want to play that clip and then get your response. So let's take a look.
But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year.
So, Alex, you didn't exactly answer the question as far as the support for the Green New Deal. Is that because politically it just isn't there for the average American?
Well, the truth is it was a terrific example of her having to backpedal as fast as she possibly could. You know, early on in her career, she embraced the Green New Deal. She thought she was going to pursue the sort of the left side progressive path to the presidency. And it turned out that path doesn't exist to the presidency. It's backfired on her. That's why she's on the vice presidential stage rather than having a debate with President Trump on the presidential debate stage.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I think it's something, too, that Vice President Mike Pence did a very effective job at kind of showing the other side of the issue on, because it's become clear that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have now pivoted back to the center a little bit after taking a more of a progressive stance during the primary. That's naturally how things go. But Vice President Mike Pence, he took the climate issue, as we were saying, and then focused on the economic consequences of what a Green New Deal could mean. So here's what he had to say when he was pressed on the issue.
And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation, and we've done it through natural gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking.
So, Alex, on one hand, that is almost a direct plea to the people of Pennsylvania and Ohio, for example, when it comes to fracking. But I think there also is a climate change perspective to be made when it comes to natural gas, for example, as opposed to burning coal or fuel or something like that. Do you think that's the right approach for Republicans to take?
Oh, it's absolutely the right approach. I mean, what the vice president is doing is leading with economics. That's our strength. And the real challenge for us is we have to think about the climate discussion and its economic consequences and what are the serious economic proposals that can respond to the need to have a credible position on climate. What he's done is it's good in Pennsylvania. It also happens to be true. And the fact that the price of wind and solar, and particularly natural gas, have fallen so much over the last several years has reduced the price of electricity. It's allowed for the economy to boom in the United States. And that's a very important policy agenda that we have to continue to pursue as we deal with climate issues.
And when we talk about fracking, too, is it a cleaner form of energy or a cleaner way of just, I guess, getting fossil fuels in some way than the typical practices that we normally talk about?
Well, look, the truth is we have to have electricity because it improves life expectancy and quality of life and all these things. I mean, it's an underpinning to the U.S. economy. Sure. The real question is, how do we generate that electricity? Natural gas has significantly expanded the portion of the electricity that it generates in recent years. And as a result, CO2 emissions in the electricity sector have fallen substantially.
Yeah, and I think that was very well said by Vice President Mike Pence because, I mean, for example, the average person probably doesn't know the ins and outs of the issue, but he made it very clear and understandable for the person who may be introduced to this issue for one of the first times. Because then there was another time, for example, when the vice president was asked about the larger issue of climate change. It's something that Democrats always try to hold against Republicans. And he was asked if he believed if it was an existential threat to humanity. I want to show his response really quickly.
Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America.
So, Alex, is that really the perspective of the Republican Party in its entirety? Because I know that sometimes when we talk about climate change, some Republicans will say that it's out of our control. We don't know how much man contributes to it. But then I hear from a lot of younger Republicans and conservatives in particular saying that this is a big issue among a lot of young people. And whether or not it's one we want to make part of our central part of our agenda or anything is almost beside the point. We have to have a response to some degree. Do you think that is the right type of response or no?
So you're absolutely right. So we've done polling and focus group work in swing states like North Carolina, Texas, and Florida. The majority of voters there believe the climate is changing. And as Republicans, we have to be able to respond to that. We have to have a policy position. And so what the vice president does, it said, we're going to respect the science and then pivot and discuss the economic consequences of what we're going to do on this issue is absolutely the right path forward. As we like to say, we have to be responsible about the science and we have to be responsible about the economics.
And I think it's really appealing, too, when you work in the possibility of green new jobs, for example, into that perspective. I know that that's what the Biden campaign is doing, but they also have to combat the fact that a lot of the surrogates are saying that the Earth is going to end in 12 years, things of that nature. So it's a balancing act for them as well. But I think you're exactly right. When we take the issue of the climate and bring in the economic perspective as well, I think that is something that resonates more so with the average person, especially someone who doesn't necessarily live by a coastline or anything like that, because there are people that we talk to, for example, in Iowa, who say, you know what, we are experiencing more floods. Maybe that is an offset of what climate change or anything could be. But this will be an issue that will presumably be brought up again in future debates, and one that could make a major difference to people in states like Pennsylvania and Ohio, as we were saying when we talk about fracking. So President Trump was asked about this topic last night on Fox News. I want to show what his approach was. Let's take a look.
Well, it's a deal that was conceived of by not smart people, AOC plus 3 and others. I don't even think they had any experience in the environment. But this was a deal conceived of. And the real price is $100 trillion. That's more money that this country could make in 100 years if things went well, okay? I mean, they literally want to take buildings down and rebuild them with tiny little windows, okay? Little windows so you can't see out, so you can't see the light. And the whole thing is so crazy. It's such a crazy thing. And take a look. And Biden agreed to this with Crazy Bernie.
So I think a majority of people get the point that he was trying to get across. I'm not sure about the validity of little windows or anything like that, but it's the idea that it would be systemic changes to the way that we know life. Do you think that is the right response that he should utilize in maybe future debates, if there are any?
So, Alex, I've been doing energy policy for 25 years. And when the Green New Deal came out, I took a look at it. And what I realized was there was no policy there. It was a manifesto, really, for a radical transformation of the economy in accordance with progressive values. There wasn't any energy policy substance there. So it then became incumbent upon the rest of us to say, what does this really mean? What are the consequences of this? And whether it was what would happen to hamburgers or airplanes or trains or automobiles or building efficiency standards, it was the Green New Deal advocates never defined what that was. So the president says it could be the following things. Well, the bottom line is, it's been debunked. It's not working. The country is not going to move that far left. Now it's time for Republicans to engage on this issue so that we can win elections and so that we can participate in figuring out what we're going to do on this issue. The vice president is playing it very well, and he had Kamala Harris on her heels in the debate. It really was something to watch.
No, I think the very fact that she is pivoting on this issue shows where the political winning argument actually is. And I remember when the Green New Deal first came out, even their own fact page didn't know what they were talking about. They had to edit it shortly after being published, and then it wasn't too long after where people started saying the whole title, the Green New Deal, is a play on the New Deal. It's a systemic change to the way that our economy and regulatory things operate. So that's really what they're looking to do here. Do you agree?
I think they were trying to use climate to advance a much broader agenda that had to do with health care and guaranteed income and other things. And what we as conservatives need to do is we need to say, look, if we're going to address climate, which we ought to do, we ought to put together a program that does it in a responsible, economically efficient way. That's where we can lead on this issue. And I think the vice president is signaling that.
No, it's a fantastic topic and really one that's very interesting for a lot of people, too, because it raised a lot of eyebrows when we saw it at the last debate, but it's one that's going to come up once again. Alex Flint, I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight, breaking down this whole issue, because it's a very important one. Thank you.